What's up, Ty?
Hey.
Y'all got a follower too at Ty the Historian on Instagram, as well as the same on TikTok, right?
Yeah, well, I just deleted my TikTok, so
Okay.
Instagram is the main place, and Threads is where you'll find me.
Okay, that's what's up. Now, Ty, I have been coming up here often. You know, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a stone's throw away. And so every time I come to Raleigh, I try to stop by most historically black places just so I can, you know, just feel the spirit, right, the energy that was there, and to kind of glean some information from that. But I'm not very well versed on this cemetery, and you have done some research in the area, being that you aren't too far from here. You live in Durham?
I live in Raleigh.
So you're in Raleigh now? Okay, that's, I don't know why I thought Durham for some reason.
Yeah, I'm in Raleigh. I go to NC State, so I'm like always around here.
For the PhD?
Yes.
Yes, we're about to be calling her doctor soon,
Lord,
y'all.
yes.
But she's here today to give us some information about the history of the cemetery, how it got started, and a little bit about the community. So it's on you, sister.
Okay, so Oberlin Cemetery was established in 1873 by the descendants of the Oberlin community. The Oberlin community for Wake County, this was the largest freedmen settlement post-Civil War of freedmen here in Raleigh here. So that's where we are.
And I see it's a medical, is this like a?
This is a...
It's some type of facility.
It is a facility. It's like a women's like health facility.
Okay, that's what's up.
Or like for like substance abuse and stuff like that. But
okay, gotcha.
The cemetery is on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's cared for by the Friends of Oberlin. So they have done a really good job, just like keeping the history and the legacy of the formerly enslaved who had a whole family here. Like all of Oberlin, all of this street was black owned.
Yeah.
And there are many African American communities in Raleigh, but this one was definitely the largest. It was formerly a plantation. I can't think of the name, but upon like emancipation, the former planter granted all of this land. I think one of the members of Oberlin, the Oberlin community, purchased this land and named it Oberlin after Oberlin College in Ohio. And this was just
really?
And so this was just the community where the African Americans live their life. There are two churches here. One of them is Wilson Temple, and I do believe that was founded by members of the Oberlin community.
Okay, got you. So we can walk around. Cemeteries for me, well, let me ask for you, because I know genealogy is also something that you do. What do cemeteries signify for you in relation to genealogy?
Oh, first of all, cemeteries are so sacred, number one. But for me, in terms of genealogy, cemeteries, unfortunately, hold a lot of history. Like a lot of people, we talk about how the main places where you can find information on African American life is black churches, cemeteries, and their like school, whatever schools they founded. But the cemetery holds so much significance because you can really put the pieces of your own history together just by looking at birth dates, death dates of family members, and different things like that. So it's a very important place.
Yeah.
But I do know that the founder of my beloved alma mater, North Carolina Central University, is James Shepard. He is from Oberlin.
Okay.
So I didn't know that before, but he is from this community. He's not buried here, but yeah, he comes from this community.
That's what's up. And I'm looking right here, and I'm just looking at, I always like to see, you know, some of the folks who were the oldest that were here. And this person was born in 1791 and died, it looks like in
85.
Is that 85? Yeah, for sure. 1885, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I love it. And then we have someone who died in 1894 over there. They were 66 years old. And then someone who passed in 1890. That person was 40, and so forth and so on. So some of the research that you've been able to accomplish here, what are some of the surprising things that have come out that have come forth from the research that you've done?
Done here specifically? I think just seeing how different plantations were connected. There are a lot of recurring family names like Hinton, and I think a lot of these are connected to Stagville, which was another major big plantation.
For sure.
A lot of the former owners or planters, they had connections, so these families ended up having connections. So that's been the most interesting, just to see who got moved where, and where did they end up living and different things like that. I
So,
did most of that when I was at NCCU in my master's program.
okay, and so obviously there's a lot of cross-referencing that you have to do, and late nights with coffee or
Yes,
music
absolutely.
or what have you, 5 hour energies so you can stay awake. The most difficult part in researching Black cemeteries, what has that been for you?
I think just the most difficult part is having holes, just not knowing, African Americans didn't start showing up on census records until 1870. So of course, having to backtrack to slave records and really work hard to put those pieces together is difficult. But unfortunately, there's just so much that we don't have documentation of. And
For
it's like,
sure.
what do you do with that? How do you tell a story when there's chunks of a story missing?
Missing.
And the story still has to be told. So we have to find creative ways to see how we can put those pieces together as best we can.
Yeah, that's for sure. For you, obviously, you've done a lot of research in the Low Country of North Carolina because that's where you hail from. Coming up here, what are some of the similarities that you're seeing as it relates to the research? And are there any family names that you are seeing here that's also relevant down near the coast?
Oh, that's a good question. So I have one.
Okay.
Now, what is the last name? I'm trying to think of it. The people who founded Merrick, the last name Merrick, I believe that the Merrick family, they were one of the founders of the Mechanics and Farmers Bank.
The bank. Yep.
Okay, so that family name actually does show up in the southeastern part of North Carolina. I was going through a family tree document that we have for the 3 freedom settlements out there, and Merrick is one of the names from Marsh Branch.
Okay.
So we've speculated that there's a connection, but we haven't been able to confirm that there's a connection. But Merrick is very much a Durham name.
Yes.
So the fact that that's showing up down there is pretty interesting.
It definitely speaks to something for sure. As you see, there's all kind of building that's happening around here. There's some apartments over there. There's some $1 million townhomes, I think, that are a little bit further down. And so this is like a really big hotbed for real estate here in Raleigh. And one of the things that I always that I do hate, I'm going to just say that, is that when you think of what life was like here for Black folks prior to all this gentrification and urban renewal, quote unquote, which I just call them hostile takeovers,
Right.
and how the opportunity for wealth passed down has been completely wiped out. Because when we see these types of things happening, then you're kind of late to the party if you aren't already there. But the unfortunate part about that is that it was owned by other folks prior to, and through various different ways, whether it was self-negligence or if it was, eminent domain, et cetera, those properties and opportunities are taken away. And so when you see all this development that's happening around here, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you? And have you seen this, and I know you have, but in other communities as well, and if you don't mind talking about that.
Yeah, it's literally everywhere. I don't think there's anywhere you can go in like a metropolitan city or even in more rural communities where it wasn't Black people living and their land got taken away. So unfortunately, that's just the reality, and I hate it. So for here, and I can't remember all the way because when I was doing research here, it was a few years ago, but I do believe that the reason why the land kind of got taken or moved from the hands of the owners has something to do with the soldiers leaving for one of the wars. I can't remember if it's World War I or World War II, but they came back and their property was taken. So that, if you're interested in learning more about the Oberlin community, to the folks out there, I would encourage you to do some research. The Friends of Oberlin, they've done a fabulous job just keeping this history alive and telling these stories. They do a lot of they've done exhibits before. There was one, I want to say it was called Remembering Oberlin, and it was a photo exhibit, and it was highlighting some iconic members of the Oberlin community and descendants of the Oberlin community. So I would definitely encourage y'all folks to do some research on this specific community because they had a tremendous impact in the city prior to gentrification. And
The area of history that you are soon to be doctored in. What is it, and what was it that led you to choose that specific, concentration?
Well, my area of focus is African American life in the Lower Cape Fear, and I really want to examine the displacement of descendant communities and its effect on cultural identity.
Okay.
So my family comes from, well, my grandfather's side comes from a town in Brunswick County that no longer exists called Marsh Branch. And Marsh Branch was destroyed in the 40s to create one of the largest military terminals in the world, Sunny Point Ocean Terminal. So that's all, my family owned all that land at
Wow.
one point. And I truly believe, well, the reason why I started doing this work is because I didn't know that we were Gullah Geechee until I was good and grown. Like I knew there, we talked different. I knew that we ate, different than people that I grew up with in Charlotte. So I definitely saw a difference, but I didn't know what I was looking at. And then once I found out, okay, this is indeed like the name of like our culture or our people, I wanted to know how come I just found that out. And if I just now found that out, a lot of people may not be aware. So I made it my business to learn as much as I could.
I was going to say, you've been going hard.
Yeah, like I really wanted to learn about my family because my family has been there for over 7 generations. Like
Wow.
my 6th great grandfather fought in the Revolutionary War, and was enslaved at Lilliput Plantation. So like I really wanted to know if we are indeed Gullah Geechee, who are my ancestors that were the first to be brought over to the Lower Cape Fear? Where did they come from? Right? And then after emancipation, what communities did they live in? What communities did they build? What churches did they build? What schools did they build? And why is this so under-researched?
Yeah.
Because my family mainly lives in Southport, and they've been there since the beginning of time. And when you look at Southport, you see, beaches and boats and Safe Haven and, all these beachfront movies and white folk, and you don't see any trace of African American life. But my family's been there for forever.
Yeah.
So I just really took it upon myself to learn as much as I could about essentially myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's just, learning hands-on just by being inquisitive, whether you're a kid or whether you're younger as well. Because, for me, I'm constantly learning something new, and, even delving into great cousins, and a lot of people may not think of those folks as being part of your genealogy, your tree, but you just never know what little crumbs that may lead to a whole loaf of bread. To a certain degree. Now, for you, as it relates to, as we just casually walk through the cemetery, were cemeteries in something that, as a young person, that you were like, I don't want to go to a cemetery, or has it always kind of drawn you to it from a level of curiosity?
So I have a funny story.
All right, let's talk about it.
My mom's side is from North Carolina, but my dad's side is from Mississippi. Right across the street from my grandmother's house in Bovina, Mississippi, there is a cemetery. Me and my cousins and my siblings used to run through that cemetery and have so much fun. So cemeteries have never really been scary to me.
Okay.
They've always been a place of comfort. And now that I'm kind of on this journey of like, with my work and personally of ancestral veneration, I find great comfort in being in the cemetery, especially the cemeteries from home. I feel like I'm just around family.
Family, okay, that's what's up. So let's check out some of these over here, some of these markers. Is there anyone in particular here that you researched that you found interesting that's buried here?
I did, and I wish I had known to go back through all of my old notes from years ago. I do believe that there are a few families that we did some research on that were interesting, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head today.
Okay. I'm sure we have some veterans over here too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there's a John Winbush over here, 1936. And you mentioned the name Hinton. And
Yeah,
so there's Jerry. Yeah. 110 years old.
Wow.
Wow. Right here. 110 years old, Jerry Hinton. Died May the 20th, 1920, age 110, gone to a brighter home where grief cannot come. Wow. I gotta take a picture of this, y'all. That is pretty dope. Let me pause. This is another name. This is a name that you had mentioned, which was Jerry Hinton. or the Hinton family. And this brother was born May 20th and died at 110 years old. So 1810.
Wow.
That's it. And so obviously we see all of these as well, which we know are indications of people who are interred here. So these are everywhere also. I know in other places, even some of my own family, like shells, pieces of pottery and things like that are often found. What has been your experience with seeing those types of things in cemeteries?
Oh yeah, I see them more so down in like Lower Cape Fear region. For instance, at the John N. Smith Cemetery in Southport, there's a family who kept that tradition up. So their graves are decorated with like different types of shells. Not so much pottery, but definitely heavy on like the seashells. I don't know if that is like, I wouldn't say that was specifically a Gullah tradition, but definitely a remnant of African tradition to decorate the grave site with like pottery, or maybe the loved one who is deceased, their personal, their personal items
For
and
sure.
things like that. Yeah.
That's what's up. Anything else about this area that we should all keep in mind, and what do you encourage individuals that may be coming to places, with their history excursions over the summer or what have you, or doing genealogy research? What are some things that you encourage individuals to put in consideration, and also to some tips perhaps based on the things that you've done?
Yeah, I think just to keep in mind that when we're dealing with things like this and we're dealing with communities, we're dealing with people. And though these people may not be here, their descendants are. And just to keep that in mind and come from a place of humility and being willing to learn from the community members, and be less of like, don't be an extractor. I find that a lot of people that want to embark on like a history journey or genealogy, and they want to come to these places that are, for the public and are recognized to be historic sites, they're very extracty.
Yeah.
And they're not paying, homage or respect to the people that either rest here or the people that are around here.
Yeah.
Because if you look around this area specifically, you see how gentrified it has become.
For sure.
So it's not a lot of people that have a regard for these communities, but these people are still here. So I think it's important just to lead with that level of respect if you're doing any type of research, historical, anything.
And so what are we expecting out of you once you walk across that stage? And you're already doing great work now, of course, but what should we expect from you?
That's a wonderful question. Once I get...
Is that something you try to figure out yourself right now?
Yeah, I am. I definitely know that I have a heart to teach, so I will be a professor at some point. But also, whatever work I do, it'll be outside the halls of academia, outside of teaching, But I really feel like public history is so important. A lot of times with like traditional history, works are being produced for the Ivy Tower, the Ivy Halls or whatever, not necessarily for the everyday person. So my goal is just to get more involved in my community and the communities in which I live, and be able to teach others different ways to interpret history.
Okay.
I think that's, in a nutshell, what I'll be doing forever.
So that's it, right?
Yep.
Which is why you're also a lifelong learner, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Any last words as it relates to the Oberlin Village and its preservation and all that good stuff? Anything you want to send off the crowd with?
I just want to say I would encourage more people to do research on Oberlin Village. And if you are looking for books to read about Raleigh's early Black communities,
That's what's up. Well, listen, y'all. This was a video that I definitely wanted to do just because of the simple fact that I've been following her work for such a long period of time. I want to say maybe like 5 years now. I think we shot that back in 2021. The documentary, and she's great in that. And we know that great things will continue to flourish from your career as a PhD graduate coming up here pretty soon. When you graduate?
I think fall 28.
Fall 28.
Yeah, so got a little time.
Got a little time. But like I always say, if you like this type of content, please make sure to subscribe and share. Consider becoming a member as well. Peace and blessings.